Buenos días, ministros, autoridades y audiencia en general. Quería saludarles en español y pedirles permiso para cambiarme al inglés para facilitar el diálogo con Tonnie. Tonnie, now I switch to English so you can understand me more easily. Well, let me start by saying thank you, Tonnie, for joining us. It is a privilege to have the European Union joining this activity, and it is necessary given what we have heard before. You have a long experience in the European Union. You are the advisor to the Director General of DG Connect for the digital single market, a key initiative of the European Union related to the digital agenda. And you have a long history working for the European Union in different areas related to technology and information society. You started in the 90s. You advised the Commissioner for Information Society at the beginning of the 2000s. You were a key player in the design of the digital single market strategy of the European Union, and now you advise the international reach of it. You were part of the team that designed Europe 2020, another key initiative of the European Union to promote growth and employment. And this shows, well, you are from Belgium. That's an important fact as well. And you're an economist. That's an important part of your biography as well. Before I go ahead with a very brief introduction, for those of you that were expecting a different phase for Lea Jimenez, the chief of the division, obviously I'm not Lea Jimenez. I have to excuse Lea Jimenez, my boss. She is in a session of the board of directors of the bank, whose agenda is hard to control. So it didn't finish, and I'm just taking over her role. So I ask for excuses on her behalf. I was saying, Tonnie, when I introduced you, that if you have heard the presentations in the morning, both the authorities, I mean, the opening remarks and then the subsequent ministers mentioned, I would say, three key messages. One is what we know, that the digital technologies have helped the countries to continue their operations, both in the government and in the private sector. And we've seen very interesting illustrations from Panama and from Argentina, right? The second element is that, yes, we progress significantly, and the rankings that were shown by United Nations and OECD show that some of our countries have advanced significantly, but we have many challenges ahead of us. Connectivity was mentioned, just half of the population is not connected, but some others related to digital identity that is not widely used in the region, interoperability, cybersecurity. There were some interesting facts about the lack of protection of our cyberspace. So we need to strengthen our policies and redouble our efforts to advance the digital agenda. And I think that's where your presentation comes in at the right moment, Tonnie. The European Union has progressed significantly at the national level and as a region as well. I mean, there are several initiatives that I hope you touch upon, or subsequently we will touch the Q&A, that are key for the progress of the European Union. I mean, related to interoperability, digital identity, even connectivity, etc. So this is to say that we are both privileged, thankful, and very happy that we're going to listen to your presentation. I didn't even mention the fact that the European Union has a long history of supporting Latin American and Caribbean countries in the digital agenda. I remember the very initial support to the ELAC strategy, the ELAC agenda at the beginning of the 2000s. So this is just kind of a continuation of that support, and we are eager to listen to what the European Union is doing, what has learned, and what support is coming up. So with further ado, Tonnie, the floor is yours, and thank you again for sharing the experience of the European Union with us. Please go ahead, Tonnie. Thank you.
Dear Miguel, Your Excellencies, distinguished speakers and participants, ladies and gentlemen, I think the honor is entirely mine. First of all, let me allow myself to wish you a good morning or start of the afternoon in parts of your region. And I would like to apologize for speaking English. My passive Spanish is really fine, but I would not feel really at ease to give a presentation like this. So my apologies for that. I would really like to thank, on behalf of the European Commission and Directorate General Connect, and my Director General in particular, who sends his apologies and has asked me to represent our DG, to have this opportunity to address your important meeting today. In response to what you said, I think we couldn't agree more on all these points, and I think in my presentation I will touch on all of them. I think let me maybe first present briefly what is the Europeans' policy to foster this digital transformation, and we're at the core of that transformation. And this is really all about turning a crisis into an opportunity. And secondly, let me then go into a little bit more detail about our cooperation with Latin America and the Caribbean. And then I hope that we can have some time for Q&A afterwards. First of all, I think we need to start about talking about the importance of digital. I think it's obvious, but nevertheless, it's really important to just briefly outline this. And in the European Union, the President of the European Commission, Mrs. von der Leyen, when she took office a year ago, put the digital transformation as one of the 6 pillars, one of the 6 top priorities of the mandate of her commission. And with that, she set out an ambitious policy program, which I will briefly present. Our key aim really is to ensure that digital technology works for people, that the people can reap the benefits in terms of better services, like for healthcare or education, that they can enjoy applications and products which are offered by digital technologies, but also by ensuring that our citizens can trust the digital technologies, that they feel confident with them. In outlining this new agenda, we're of course working very much building on the extensive work which was done over the previous years to make sure that the European Union's main asset, namely an integrated digital single market, is fully functional. And then the COVID pandemic came along, and it has really demonstrated more than ever the essentiality, how essential digital technologies are. The sheer fact that today we're able to, across continents, keep the work going, keep the contacts going, is entirely due to digital technologies. In the European Union, as said, we want also to turn the crisis, and the economic crisis, which is the result of the COVID pandemic, we want to turn that into an opportunity to invest in the transformation of our societies, of our economies, towards a more digital and a more green economy. And this is very important because the European Union, as you surely know, has put in place an unprecedented recovery package of 700 billion euros on top of the more than 1 trillion euros that it will spend in its next financial phase, next financial budgetary phase for the period 2021-2027. And indeed, what is key is that the European leaders have decided, they've taken up the idea, the proposal of the European Commission President, that at least 20% of these recovery funds should be dedicated to investment in digital. And so we're talking in the next few years of an investment of at least around 150 billion euros $150 billion US dollars, translating some 135 billion euros in investments in digital within the European Union and its 27 member states. This will come on top of the 80 billion euro that the European Union, as part of this new 7-year budget, will spend on research and development, and of which, of these 80 billion euros for research and development, of course, a large part will also be dedicated to investment in digital, and there will be also a new Digital Europe program for the deployment of digital technologies. Also of a substantial budget, around 8 billion euros. So really unprecedented amounts which are available. And all this funding will constitute really a key boost to the digital transition. I mean, the objective is to invest in next generation technologies, supercomputers and quantum technologies, blockchain, human-centered AI, microprocessors, to deploy 5G all over the European Union, to work on enhanced cybersecurity, notably through quantum encryption, to help facilitate green transition, because the two go also hand in hand, and to upgrade digital in educational systems and to boost our skills. So this is really for the budgetary outset, the investment which we're planning, and the importance of digital in this transformation of our societies, of our economies. Let me then switch to the envisaged policy and regulatory initiatives for digital, which the program is very vast, so I've picked out, I think, a few which match also what you mentioned, and which are probably the most urgent and priority actions. Firstly, data. I think there is no digital transformation without a key investment in data. It affects all sectors of the economy, this transformation, and it will continue to expand and deepen. And it really depends on data. That is the lifeblood which runs through it. The volume of data in the world is growing rapidly by a factor of 5 between now and 2025. So it's really the lifeline of the digital economy. It's key, for example, to develop AI. So in the European Union, we want to seize this potential of European data. To that end, the European Commission has launched earlier this year a European strategy for data. It aims at creating a single market for data, where more data is available for use by novel, innovative services and for societal objectives. And to that effect, the Commission will propose later this month legislation to create a European data governance framework, which will facilitate the development of these European data spaces in key areas such as health, manufacturing, this Green Deal, the mobility and support of European industry. Besides data, of course, there is artificial intelligence. It has huge potential, that's obvious to all of us. So in the European Union, we launched a white paper, which is a consultation paper, in February of this year, after we had consulted a high-level expert group on the ethical questions. And in this white paper, we have proposed a two-pronged approach. On the first side, the first pillar is about creating an ecosystem of excellence, which is focused on investment in AI. So to facilitate testing in AI, to make sure that SMEs can take it up, to support the skills development, and to promote R&D in the next generation AI. And secondly, we have a European way about putting people at the heart of the approach to digital. And that's why we feel that it is necessary, after this reflection with this high-level expert group, that we also regulate AI. We need to create an ecosystem of trust. We need to address some of these ethical issues, and thereby create a risk-based regulatory framework to ensure that there is acceptance of AI by businesses and by citizens. And so therefore, early next year, we will propose this regulatory framework. Digital identity. This, in an increasingly digital world, of course, we need to ensure that our electronic identities are secure and reliable and can be served the businesses and the citizens and the interactions between both. We already have in Europe in place a regulatory framework, the so-called eIDAS, or electronic identification and authentication systems, whereby we mutually recognize the signatures in the digital signatures and authentication systems in the European Union. And we have worked a lot on the standards behind them. And we nevertheless think that we need to do more in the European Union, and the European Council, so the European heads of state and government, have therefore called for creating an EU-wide digital identification architecture, which is something which we will work on also next year. Fourthly, 5G. I mean, connectivity, you mentioned it, is absolutely essential. It's essential for our competitiveness. 5G is a game changer. It will make sure that all economic sectors, it create a so-called industrial internet, that all industrial sectors can, ripe efficiency gains, productivity gains. And this is, and in that way also provide better public services, notably in regional areas, and foster the rural development. But it doesn't go, and I said, so we have an ambitious program in the European Union to deploy that as fast as possible. We have identified corridors, cross-border corridors where this will be deployed, so that also services like connected and automated mobility can be developed on them. But it doesn't go without, of course, high levels of cybersecurity. And that's why in the European Union we have developed a so-called 5G toolbox for cybersecurity, which was work which is really risk-based and objective. And it introduces an objective set of measures to mitigate these risks. There's a lot of international interest on this. And this brings me also to the importance, I've mentioned it before, of standardization. In the European Union, we strongly believe in single global interoperable standards. They bring benefits for digital technologies, interoperability, they reduce costs, better services for customers. And this is so very much at the heart of the European values. Also the way we set standards with an industry-led, stakeholder-based model. So this is an area also where, and I'll come back to that later on, also where we're happily cooperating with Latin America and the Caribbean. And we have an instrument to promote European standards, to promote global standards, and to promote the way we in Europe want to do this standard setting for digital, a program which is called Indico, which the European Commission funds and runs together with our friends colleagues in ETSI, which is our standard setting body for digital. And we have already worked together with the Inter-American Development Bank, also, for example, on blockchain standards. So that's also work which is going on. There are many other work strands in digital. I can't possibly mention them all because I think we do not have the time for that. I just want to mention supercomputing, which in the current context helps us a lot in tackling the COVID pandemic, because we use it to model how molecules can bring cures to the COVID disease. E-commerce platforms, telecom, audiovisual legislation are of course also at the core, at the heart of our digital single market. But let me briefly sketch also our cooperation with the region. First of all, you've mentioned it, we've been closely working together with Latin America and the Caribbean on supporting your efforts to establish the Mercado Regional Digital, and thereby exchanging our experience with the establishment of our digital single market. And we've done so, and we continue doing so. We're happy to continue doing so over the next few years. Let me also mention that in this framework, on October the 30th, just now, we had an EU-CELAC joint initiative seniors officials meeting on cooperation on research and innovation. And there also digital was quite central, so we spent a lot of time and agreed some concrete strands of cooperation on digital with a big focus on connectivity. And connectivity between our regions is also, of course, absolutely essential. And we're very happy of the investment and the support for the rollout of Bella, which is a connection between a submarine cable connection between Latin America and the Caribbean and the European Union. And we're, of course, very keen also on promoting the rollout throughout Latin America of this infrastructure, because this is more than just about connectivity between research and scientific communities, which is extremely important, but it is the basis itself of the development of a whole data and digital economy. And my department, the Directorate General Connect, so the department which is in charge of digital policy in the European Commission, has bilateral dialogues with several countries of the region. Those are very fruitful, very much geared towards concreteness, finding concrete ways of cooperating and collaborating, notably on exchanging good practices when it comes to regulation or policies, or even cooperating on standards and research and development. I mentioned already the Indico program to promote the standard setting, the global standard setting for digital. And in that area, we're very much looking with the region to develop cooperations on standard setting in areas which are of priority for us, like 5G and beyond 5G already, and cybersecurity, eIDA, so this whole e-identification which you mentioned, and last but not least, also around Internet of Things and smart cities, where also there are important global standards which can be used. And I already mentioned the work which we're doing with you on blockchain. So this is in a nutshell, nevertheless relatively long, and my apologies for that. What are the core points of our digital policy, of the digital investment, and how we want to transform the crisis of the pandemic into an opportunity of transforming our society, our economy, into a digital one in the European Union, and some highlights of where we are already cooperating with Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you very much, and of course I remain available for some questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tonnie. Thank you so much. As I think, as I anticipated, the European Union is a very valuable reference for what we're discussing here in Latin America and the Caribbean region. And I'm sure many of the ministers attending here and authorities somehow envy at least the numbers that you mentioned about how much the European Union is going to invest in the upcoming years in the digital agenda, considering that most of the countries there are starting in quite an advanced stage in what relates to connectivity and the use of technology in the public sector. But even though that, you're still going to invest beyond $100 billion in the upcoming years, which is an impressive figure. Let me ask you, and I invite the ministers and the delegations to post questions to you, Tonnie, in the Q&A space. They will be forwarded to me. But let me start by asking you about something you didn't touch upon, and is a problem or a challenge in the region, the availability of digital talent, of professionals in information technology. That is a big problem in Latin American and Caribbean countries, particularly for the public sector that has to compete with the private sector for that talent. Can you tell us about what the European Union is doing to ensure that you will have availability of talent to manage that agenda? Is there any particular initiative that we haven't heard of that is interesting to hear about?
You're absolutely right. I mean, digital skills is an absolute prerequisite. And at the European Union level, we are, I mean, you have to understand that skills development is primarily a responsibility of I mean, educational policy is primarily a responsibility of the member states of the European Union, but nevertheless, of course, with the tools and policies we have at the European level, we're really boosting that topic a lot. It's absolutely essential. We fully agree on that. And we've taken several initiatives. We've taken initiatives to bring the stakeholders together by creating platforms, sort of so-called digital alliances also, by bringing public and private sector together, by bringing the trade unions, the educational world together, the academic world, and creating common agendas, curricula. I mean, through these initiatives, bringing the players together that they can work together on development of digital skills. So at the European Union level, we've promoted that at the level of our member states, so that these platforms exist in all of our member states, and also we have that at the European Union level. There is, of course, through the European Social Fund, we're also investing quite a bit of money in the support of in the investment in the training of skills for digital. And as I said, as part of the recovery package, there will be a big priority also to investment in digital skills. This is one of the 6 priority areas where we're pushing our member states to make proposals for investment under this recovery package. So yes, and then indeed also through the more, how should I say, sectorial initiatives. When, as I mentioned, in the program which we have to stimulate artificial intelligence, there is also there an important segment which is dedicated to the development specifically of the skills that are necessary for AI, because I think everybody, everybody is facing this, in a sense, difference between, very high number of needs for digital skills and the availability of them, and also the continuous need to retrain these skills. That's also a very important element. But again, here I think investment is very important, but it's equally important to bring the players together so that stakeholders, the people on the terrain, can define the agendas together, can define the curricula together.
Thank you, Tony. I have a couple more questions that are about the topics that are key for the digital agenda of our region. But let me ask you one question that comes from the delegates and relates to a hot topic that you mentioned, blockchain. Is there any solution, a digital government solution that comes to your mind that has been developed in blockchain or is working well in blockchain? If you don't have anyone in your mind right now, you can just also refer us to the branch that manages blockchain in your office in DigiConnect, and we can address it to them. But if you have something in your mind, please feel free to share it, Tony.
Well, blockchain is absolutely indispensable. It's a technology of the future. It's also very important for cybersecurity. For development of financial services. So we're working very closely on that, and we've developed a sort of action plan about blockchain. I think one of the key elements on which we've been working is to make sure that there are standards in place. And so that, to that effect, standards and procedures of how to adopt blockchain also in specific contexts, such as financial services, where of course there are also, the regulatory requirements are very, how should I say, very heavy, very developed. So it's very important that also the actors of these two worlds come together. So besides work on standardization, and work on sort of understanding that the different communities understand what the regulatory requirements are, we thought it was really important to bring all these actors together, and to that effect in the European Union, but this is a global initiative, because companies and players from around the world participate in that. We helped setting up an organization which is called INATPA, and which is going to precisely work on these aspects, work on the development of standards. So there are already, I don't have the figures here now, but a really impressive amount of companies which are also already participating. And as I said, not just from the European Union, but also from outside companies, which then, of course, operate also within the European Union. So I'm happy also to put the person who, or through you, to provide the details of where you can find that information. And when if you have specific questions, we can also organize a contact with my colleagues, of course.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony. Let me pose a question about one of the topics that I was mentioning will be key for the digital agenda of our region, data. You touch upon data as one of the, as some of the experts say, is the oil of the 21st century, right? Although nowadays, with the price of the oil, maybe we can use another metaphor, but the thing is key. The European Union has an interesting approach that I think is useful for our region to listen when you want to develop an industry. And you mentioned right now that you want to push in artificial intelligence, and one of the elements in that white paper is we need to regulate it to build trust, right? That's something that you mentioned. With data in general, it was the same thing. You promoted the industry around data by setting up a regulation that is a reference worldwide, the GDPR, the famous GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation. I have two questions about that, Tony. Is that, what would you change of that regulation, if any? I mean, what is the conclusion kind of 2 years after somehow was launched? Is it working according to the plans? And what can we learn about that regulation that can be useful for countries in Latin America and the Caribbean region that are following that path and are just starting to regulate data as we speak? What can you share about that with us, Tony?
Well, first of all, to be clear, my department is not in charge of the GDPR. That's our colleagues in DG Justice and Fundamental Rights. And the key point here to understand is that, of course, high levels of data protection in the European Union is a fundamental right. So the first objective of the General Data Protection Regulation is, of course, to make sure that all the mechanisms and safeguards are in place for that protection to be ensured in the digital world. And secondly, it also creates, as you said, a single market for personal data in the European Union by allowing, because as it creates the same rules across all the member states of the European Union, it allows as a consequence also the free flow of personal data within the European Union, of course under all the conditions which are set in that regulation. So it's a very important a piece of legislation. It's a fundamental one to protect our fundamental rights, but as you said, it also has, of course, these consequences that it positive consequences that it also enables this free circulation of the data, of the personal data within the European Union. By the way, my department has also worked on a piece of legislation to ensure the free circulation of non-personal data within the European Union, which is also now also in place. I would not want to, as it's not my area, to sort of give an evaluation on the GDPR. The European Commission is currently 2 years after its entry into force exactly conducting such an evaluation of the GDPR. And so, I mean, that the results of that will become available, and I think we should await that. I think it's very clear, however, looking at the region, and we have, as you know, with some countries of the region, we have so-called adequacy agreements. That means that we consider that we mutually consider that our levels of protection of personal data are adequate, meet the same type of requirements, and as a consequence, you know, that also the exchange of personal data between the European Union and these countries and vice versa has become possible. So there is clearly already a strong basis of reference in the region around data protection.
Excellent, Tony. I think I have some more questions that I would like to ask, but I think we finished the time allocated for this exchange, and I don't want to affect the agenda of anyone in the region. But let me wrap up by saying that after listening to you, Tony, I think I speak for the audience if I say, please do strengthen that cooperation with the Latin American and Caribbean region, because many of the challenges and main elements of your digital agenda are the ones that the region needs, be it cybersecurity, be it data, be it developing an industry around artificial intelligence or quantum computing or many other parts. Of course, the EIDAS framework will be key for the region to keep strengthening the integration and the trade among the member countries. So I would say thank you for joining us, for sharing that experience. Thank you for offering a follow-up with many different specialized offices within DigiConnect that so we can go deeper in some of the elements that came up. And finally, an invitation, Tony, to keep this close dialogue and collaboration with the region for the European Union to help us progress faster in the digital agenda. That would be my final message. And thank you to the audience that stayed with us to listen to the presentation from Tony, that I think we all agree was very much worth it. Tony, I will let you wrap up in a minute if you want, and then I'll yield back to the Master of Ceremonies.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miguel. I think, again, the honor is mine. And of course, we are very glad to share our experience. The cooperation between our regions is very strong. And I think we've pointed today to some of the areas where we want to continue working and to go a bit further, notably on the area of standardization and the technology which is behind it. And of course, inevitably also around the sort of exchange around the regulatory aspects which go hand in hand with these standards, like notably on e-identification. So we're always looking also for very concrete ways of cooperating, and in that sense, of course, working with you is of course also very, very important. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I very much value it. Again, my apologies for speaking only in English. I hope one day I'll be able to do it also in Spanish and a bit of Portuguese. And so thank you very much. Have a great afternoon and great continuation of your important work. Thank you so much again for the opportunity to address your conference.
Thank you so much, Tony. In the next meeting, which hopefully will be in presence or on site, we will ask you to speak Spanish. So get ready. Thank you, Tony.
Muy bien.
With that, I thank the audience for staying with us, and I send back the floor to Martina to do the main stage. Thank you.